So Maddie asked me, unfortunately, right before we started this podcast, how my week was going. And now I hear everything about the joys of development and building houses and what a nightmare it is. So that's where my week has been, Matt.
There's a part of that is very applicable to just going into business for yourself. And that's a part of you're going to hit a roadblock every step. Like it's almost inevitable. So for a lot of people out there that are like wanting to get into business or to build their own business, I would say it's not for everyone. And if you truly are about that life, it's just going to get a lot harder than you think it will actually get better for you in the next 5 to 10 years of building it.
So I have a development, 36-lot subdivision that I am getting done in Portland, Oregon, and it is a complete and utter nightmare and has been, but developing generally is a nightmare, and in some parts of the world it is more difficult than others. But here's the thing to understand. Everybody's always screaming, particularly on the West Coast, up in the Northeast, about how expensive home building is. And let me, as someone who has built God knows how many houses, as somebody who has developed God knows how many lots, in the Northwest, in the heart of the beast that is the government, I can tell you that I am now in this development 13 years trying to bring this development to fruition. I have one of the best developers working for me directly now for 3 years full-time. This guy's done massive jobs. I have an engineer that's been at it for 40 years, the two of them working together. And I have been told by the different regulatory agencies, most specifically the county, that I will have my final sign-offs tomorrow 6 times in 3 years. And every time they come back, with a new made-up reason why they're not going to give it to me. We have had to sue them. We have had to threaten to sue them. This is just me. Now going on for 3 years. I should have been building houses in June of last year at the latest. And then it got pushed to June of this year. And now I'm still not building houses. I'm talking about building houses. I have bare land. I have to develop the land so that then I can then build the houses on top of it. And now I was supposed to start building the development this year, and now we're about to miss the season, which means I'll be building in the winter time, which means my costs will be, another, 8-10% higher because building in the winter is a nightmare. And it is all because of an anti-building, anti-construction, anti-business, anti-capitalist regime that rules so many of these cities and counties, in particular on the West Coast and up in the Northeast. That isn't to say that some places are easier or that it's easy to build anywhere, because there are rules, and there are rules for a reason, and I get that. But you come down to Tennessee, where I live now, and you want to build, you're going to have this thing built in no time flat relative to the problems that you're going to face out on the East Coast or out in the Northeast and or on the West Coast. Now, some of the places, as they become more and more liberal, that's just what it is, they become more and more Democrat and more liberal, like Franklin, Tennessee, the town that I used to live in and I moved out of, and now I live south of Franklin, Tennessee. And as the mayor becomes, more concerned with social issues than they do about what's going on in their own communities, it becomes harder and harder to build. And so the builders down here complain incessantly about how difficult it is to build here, and they are right, and it is unreasonably so, and they make it difficult for the sake of making it difficult. But the guys here have nothing on what happens in Portland, Oregon. They have nothing on what goes on in Washington State. They have nothing with what goes on in New York or Boston or Chicago. And none of those places hold a candle to California, in particular Southern California. And so you guys, anyone complaining about the cost of housing, as a developer, as a builder, as a home builder, I can tell you that I am millions of dollars into a project, and I have yet to put a shovel in the ground. The hardest part about building a project, about building a house, about building a development is you have a bunch of land, and on that land you're going to build lots. So you're going to bring in the sewers, and you're going to bring in all of the utilities, and you're going to put in the roads, and you're going to put in the sidewalks, all of those things. And then the builder, the home builder, in this case I'm going to do the same thing, comes in and you put in the foundation, you put up the sticks, and you build the house. The developer builds the development, i.e. the lots. The county then signs off on the lots, and then you have tax lots for each one. Before that, it's just however many tax lots make up the land that you are developing. And then you have individual tax lots, of which then you can sell as an individual tax lot, and people build houses. The hoops to jump through, the time that it takes to do those things is infinitely longer than it is to build the house. So you want to talk about what, and then forget about the fact that every year, just to build the house, the permit expense goes up and up. I mean, we're talking $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in some parts of the state.
That's ridiculous.
To build a house. So before I've done anything, first I got to do all the developing. So I got all the administrative, and this is not me crying. This system is built. The system is set up for the big boys. The system is not set up for small guys, local guys, the guys that live in the communities, the guys whose money stays in the communities. It is damn near impossible for any of us to build in our own communities. It's like banking, right? In 2008, I'm old enough to remember, at 56 years old, 2008, the crisis, and they all said how the banks are too big to fail, right? We got to bail them out. It's too big to fail, but we're going to put our thumb on them. There's less banks now. Those banks are 2, 3, 4 times bigger than they were in 2008. So who's getting hosed here? There's less banks today. I think I read something like there's only been 7 new nationwide banks started up. Some infinite, don't quote me on that number, some tiny little number. And anybody who goes into banking knows that now they make you make an appointment to come to the bank. Now, let's say, Matt, that you wanted to have a bank that didn't have appointments. So you're like, maybe you look at that as a capitalist and you go, hey, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to start a new bank. And my bank is going to actually serve the clientele. I'm going to actually make a difference. We're going to come in there and we're going to bring a competitive environment that all of the other big banks don't have, because they don't have to, and because they have all of these rules and regulations, and they stand on those rules and regulations, and they make it damn near impossible for anybody new to come in and to put a bank together. It's just virtually impossible. So there's this monopoly. I get that there is a bunch of banks, and they are, but they're so heavily regulated, it's almost impossible to make a difference. I talked to a lender yesterday. I talked to a bank lender, and she had come from a big bank, and she moved into a space where they are doing a nonprofit. And so they are able to say yes a whole lot more. They're funding. It's for inner cities primarily. They're able to make decisions on the fly. They're using some government money and some charitable donation money, grants, things of that nature. The businesses are legit, but they're a lot easier. And she said, I begged them to hire me here because I was 14 years as a banker in a big bank, and it's a nightmare because big banks spend all of their time trying to figure out how not to give you the money that you want. Try to say no, and I've experienced this myself on more than one occasion. I had an $11 million deal get shut down because the bank sold. I was approved. The bank sold to another bank, and the new executive VP of whatever came in and decided he didn't like my deal on a deal that was already approved. That was all about to be closed. Oh yeah, at the last minute, hosed me completely. I ended up having to go out and get more expensive money to make the deal happen because it was last minute. So, this is what they do. So there's this idea that banks are our friends. There's this idea, it's the same idea that goes along with government's your friend, right? That they're there to help out. And, well, you need government to make sure that the big bad builder doesn't build a house that is going to fall in on you. Like any builder in their right freaking mind, who's putting every dime they have, who's risking everything they have, who's working 12, 15 hours a day for his family, for his community, to build this thing, to make a better life for himself, risking it all, is going to build something that will fall in on top of you. And then we're responsible for it anyway. It just makes no sense. I'm not saying you don't need inspectors, but I can tell you 1,000 stories. I got a buddy of mine up in Tri-Cities, Washington, Used somebody to build duplexes for him up in Tri-Cities. Inspection, he kept up with it. He lived in Portland, Oregon. It's about 200 miles away. His fault. Okay, fine. 3-4 years after the house closes, there's mold. Goes in there. There's no vents in the foundation. Literally goes to his inspection report from the county. Inspector signed off. Vents in the foundation. Now, it's his fault. He didn't check. But again, he's looking at his inspections. The inspector said there were vents in the foundation. There's no vents in the foundation. Therefore, mold is going crazy, blah, blah, blah. My point being, there's no response. You pay for the inspector to come out and inspect. He inspects and signs off on it. You look at the inspection and say, oh, okay, it all got done, only to find out 2-3 years later there's a problem in the house. You go look at it, and the thing that the inspector that you paid him to go in and inspect, working for the city, comes in to do, didn't happen. There's 100 stories just like that because it's an adversarial relationship. So it's an adversarial relationship with the people across the counter. And if they don't like you, they got 25 other ones, and they put you at the bottom of the barrel. I'll tell you what else they do. They make up the rules. So in Oregon, as an example, Oregon has very specific rules about building, the state of Oregon. And everything is a hierarchy in the government. So you have the city or the county or whatever it is, the town, right? And then you have the state, and then you have the Fed. So if there's a Fed rule, the state can't overrule it. If there's a state rule, the locals can't overrule it. Oregon has tried to be progressive when it comes to building more infrastructure. They don't have enough houses. And so they've passed laws in 2019 and 2020 to dictate that builders can build smaller lots, more houses. Well, the counties just decide not to follow it. Mm-hmm. So we say, yeah, but that's the law. And the county's like, yeah, well, our regs haven't caught up. We're like, but the law. Yeah, our counties, it hasn't caught up. So well, then I got to sue you. Okay, that's 6 months. Now I missed another building season. I mean, you might have $25,000 a month carrying these things, right? Jeez. That's your carry cost while you're trying to build it out. And then again, you pay it out when you sell the lots or you sell the houses. So every step of the way, you have bureaucrats that in Oregon's case, in Portland's case, in the city of Portland's case for sure, in the county that I'm in and pretty much every other county, they do not want you to build. So you want to know why your house is so expensive. I have to make up 7 figures of investment and multiples of years before I've ever put a single shovel in the ground to get the lots ready or to get the houses built. This is not a complaint. I understand that there needs to be regulations. I get that is important, but this has become so onerous in the now going on 20 years that I've been doing this that it is almost impossible to do this, and it only benefits the big players, the same as what we talked about with the banks. I was on a podcast yesterday. The guy asked me, what advice would I give myself? His question was, what advice, and I've talked about this many times, what advice would I give to a new entrepreneur, back who's 28 years old like I was? What would I tell him? And I said, I reframe it a little bit differently. What would I tell myself? And my answer to this question, having been asked this question so many times over the decades, has changed. And the answer to the question now, what everyone should understand is the government is not your friend. The government is actively out to subvert you at every step, no matter what it is. Try licensing an interstate less than 26,000-foot truck. You're Joe Blow. You got a truck. You want to start delivering stuff from Seattle to Portland or Portland to Seattle. Good luck. Good luck doing that. It's going to take you, I can't tell you how much time, effort, and energy and money it will take you working through the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, which is a complete nightmare, and then the feds, which is an even bigger nightmare than the state of Washington and the state of Oregon. You have to get licenses for all of that. It's complex. There is nothing simple about it. You're almost better off hiring an attorney. I just want to move 4 dozen eggs from one place to another. Nope. Good luck. Yeah. It's a little bit easier interstate. It's easier interstate. But anytime you want to go between 2 states, suck it, boys, because it's about to get ugly, particularly if you are in any kind of a truck. It's easier if you're in a van or a transit or something like that. But that's just right then. I just gave you 2 examples for businesses that employ a ton of people that the government makes it Almost impossible. And then they don't even follow their own rules. If you've been following along, again, anybody knows me, I've owned transportation companies for 25 years. They don't even follow their own rules because just today the Department of Transportation came out and said, in particular the state of California, but specifically a lot of more of the bluer states have not been following the rules. And you don't speak English, here's a truck driving permit or driving license, right? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't pass the tests, here's a driver's license. Here you go. And so we have these people that are untrained running all over. They don't even speak language. They don't know how to read the signs, none of that. And Sean Duffy, who's the Department of Transportation Director for the feds, came out today and said it's a nightmare and we're closing the whole system down. If you can't, we're taking you off of the road. These guys have been inspected 1,000 times and they're never taken off the road. They don't speak English and they can't read a sign. They're getting people killed. Why am I so excited about this? Because I can tell you that drive from Portland, Oregon, in a 26-foot truck to Seattle. You're going to come through 2 weigh stations. I'm telling you, if there is half of the number, let's say a bird hit your truck while you were driving, smashed into it, ending its life. The beak wedges itself under the vinyl in the sign that has your DOT number on it. And when the beak wedges up underneath of it, then the wind catches the beak and rips half the zero off of your vinyl sign. Let's say that happened. You pull in, you're none aware, you have no idea that this happened. The poor bird is dead, right? There's a streak on the side of your truck. The beak ripped it off and it's flapping there. Dude comes in and inspects you, park the truck. This is no joke. I'm not playing. The story's made up, but I'm telling you, it's clearly a zero. It's a zero on the other side of the truck, but the bird and the beak, and it ripped it off, and how the hell do I know? Park the truck. I've literally had to send up flatbeds in weigh stations because the state of Washington is so restrictive they don't let you do anything and load the stuff onto another truck when I have a perfectly good truck sitting there simply because the number had been ripped off. And when I say a number, I mean one number of 7 or 8 numbers, however many numbers it is. So wow. That's what you're dealing with. That's just one. I could be here for 500 years.
I was going to say, do you think because of those kind of restrictions that there are more businesses popping up online because it's a lot easier to get off the ground? Or like, what's your thought about like online businesses and solopreneurs? And because I just think that kind of field specifically and like construction compared to starting an e-com store and doing really well with it and then trying to build more. Like, what is your thoughts around that?
No, I mean, that's a pipe dream. E-com stores are pipe dreams, right? I don't know if you've ever looked this up. This has been 4 or 5 years ago. I did a whole article on this thing. I was talking about this because I used to, when I first got into this space, making videos and stuff, I get hammered about e-com stores. And it's like 98% failure rate. Okay? Your brick and mortar restaurant's got a 50-50 chance. Okay, within 5 years, e-com stores die as faster than you could put them together. So that's a couple of people. The people who get rich on e-com stores is people telling you or getting you to pay them. Go ahead, Steve. Finish it for me.
I was going to say to set it up. I was going to pivot when you got through with your thing on what it does, the viability of the true viability and profitability of an e-com store. The money's in getting everybody to set them up and then just letting you sink. You pay all that money up front, get it all set up, gets you all set up. Here's your special widget. You're going to go make millions. They get their money. They're gone and setting up somebody else. And then you sit there and you get stuck with a bunch of widgets, partly because the delivery of the widgets got stuck at a weigh station in Washington.
Yes, right. The unforeseen, but everyone's selling the widget, and it's a race to the bottom. Again, when you're putting a business together, it is easy to sell. They say that selling is hard, right? Everyone says selling is hard, and I'm here to tell you selling is easy. Selling profitably, very difficult. Very difficult to sell profitably. Anybody can sell anything at cost. That's easy. And everyone can sell everything at cost. But who can sell things profitably? And then who can sell things profitably at the smallest margin to get the biggest amount of business? Remember, you'd rather have a small piece of something big than a big piece of something small. And so the big guys that do well in that space are able to make up through volume the things that they're selling. And if you're no good at that, you're hosed. And that's 97% of the people think they're going to sell the widget, to use your example, but there's 500 million other people selling widgets. So the reality is there's a reason why there's 30 million businesses in the United States. There's a reason why only 3.5 million of them have employees. And that is because, for the most part, having employees add that level of complexity, like I'm talking about with the trucks, that make this almost impossible to do, because the state, the federal, the local, the county, whatever it is, they're just oppressive. And it is, in the old days, it used to be finding employees, putting the operations together. This is back when I started 25, 30 years ago. It was almost like, the government's always been a pain in the ass, but it wasn't a pain in the ass. You just set it up and you did it. And the hardest part of running your business was running your business. Now, the hardest part of running your business is staying inside of the rules, because every year these guys come in and they just make more rules. The feds make more rules, and then the state makes more rules, and then the city makes more rules, and then the county makes more rules. And if you're in Portland, Oregon, like I am, and for one of my businesses, I have to deal with the city, I have to deal with the county, completely different set of rules, different set of taxes, and I have to deal with the state, different set of rules, different set of taxes. And I got to deal with the feds, different set of rules, different set of taxes. And if I go across the bridge into Washington, different set of rules, different set of taxes. I go over into Idaho, which I do, different set of rules, different set of taxes. Go down to California. No, do not go down to California. I do not go down to California. I have no business in California. I will never have business in California. I have had business in California. That was retarded. I should have never done it, and now I don't, because California is a whole other animal. But to answer your question, Matt, you can't make money. You're not going to get rich. You're not going to do well for yourself unless you are out here fighting it in a real business on the ground, doing something that requires you to be to have licenses and to have, truly employees. Can a solopreneur do well for themselves? 1,000%. But the money's in having people work for you and you not doing all of the work. That's where the real money starts to come in. And so that's about 3.5 million of us. And it is just it's just an absolute hill climb, because the system is built for big business, because that's who has the money, that's who does the lobbying. And so why do you think there's all of these regulations? Every time you turn around, there's new regulations, because they benefit the big business. It is a moat for big businesses, because guys like me can't get a freaking development built because I don't have millions and millions of dollars, and I don't have investor money, and I'm not Fortune 500 traded, and again, I'm not looking for a very specific margin, and I don't have a machine to just put it together. You're trying to bootstrap it, which is the way it's supposed to be. 70% of American business employers are small business. 70% of us. We are a huge majority of the employment in this country, and yet we are treated like redheaded stepchildren.
Mm-hmm. Hey, to expound on something you said earlier, because I've heard the phrase, and I think a lot of businesses operate this way when they're trying to work out. Explain the concept of a race to the bottom.
So, race to the bottom is very simple. And Matt, what's the business is called? Like a Shopify, start a store, online, econ. You never see it. It gets built in China. It gets delivered to somebody in Illinois. You're rolling in Tennessee, and you just get to sell and make the margin in the middle. Well, everyone's doing it. So all of a sudden, you can buy it in China for X, but the dude's not buying it and not taking it in Illinois for Y. You're like, well, then I got to lower Y. And so then Y becomes a new number. And you're like, oh, okay, I can live with that margin. Then Y becomes an even lower number, because you're just not getting anywhere. And then you look it up and you're like, oh, hell, they can sell it for, somebody else is selling it for a dime cheaper than I am. So I'm going to sell it for 11 cents. Boom, 11 cents. Now you're the cheapest. No one's buying it. Wait a minute. So now you go back and do it again, and somebody else has got you by a penny. You're like, oh, well, that's not going to work. And pretty soon you're selling it for less than it costs you. Literally. Mm-hmm. You can buy things on the internet right now for less than it costs for them to buy it. Right? I'm going to make it up in margin, or whatever scam in the future that they're planning on having it. Usually it's because 97% of them go out of business because they can't make any money. That's the race to the bottom.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of small businesses out there, and I think for people in my age, in their like early 30s, they either choose the corporate realm or a safe job to make money, and then at some point they're like, I'm going to go out and do it on my own. And I feel like there's a lot of individuals out there that are in between right now, trying to figure out if they want to do the entrepreneurship, the building their own business. and there's a little bit of hesitation because of all the unknowns. So as a business owner for so many years, what would be advice for someone going into entrepreneurship or going into building a business and they're trying to figure out what can I anticipate and what can I continue to like elevate within my business to continue to make money?
You can't anticipate how hard it is. That's why it's not for everybody. So a perfect example is you sell a business, the business owner calls you a year later and says, hey, you want to buy the business back because this is way harder than I think it was. I'm like, but you watched me work for all those years. You saw how the business works for all those years. And you're like, maybe a number 2 in the business, and maybe your number 2 or number 3 guy buys it, right? The number 3 guy looks at the owner and is like, oh, I can do that, right? How hard is that to do that? How hard is it to do that? Only to call you back a year later and go, hey, you want this business back, or why don't you help me sell it? Because this is a hell of a lot harder than I thought it was, and I'm pretty sure you weren't dealing with all of this stuff. It's just like, what are you talking about, man? I sold it to you after it was finished, right? I did all the hard work. And the point in that is that business owners make it look easy, particularly the ones that are operating their businesses. They're not necessarily doing well, but able to operate their business. A lot of people make a living, but they don't get rich operating their businesses. And so it is impossible to anticipate how difficult it is. You have to live it, right? You cannot grow muscle in a gym, right, until you realize that you need to. And so you start low and you fail. Right? There's no muscle and there's no nothing there, and you just get started. And then you have to beat your body up and you have to tear the sinew apart, and you have to sweat and put in all the work and be sore and get up in the morning and do all of that. And you have to do all of that. You got to put all that work. You got to fail all of those times. I mean, you can't grow muscle unless you fail. You can't have a business unless you fail. That is life. You can't learn anything. You join something, you don't know anything how to do it. I got no idea how to fly an airplane. You go join an airplane club. God forbid they let you drive it fly it the first day out, right? Because you're going to be crashing the planes. You don't know how to fly a plane. So you have to learn. You got to go through all the motions, and you got to see all the bad sides of it. You got to get the guy's got to save you with the little thing next to you so that you don't crash into a building. All of those things, that's business 101. You can read a book about how to grow muscle. You still got to go put in the time. You still got to go do it. You can read a book about how to fly an airplane, but I ain't getting on with you. Right, you got to go make mistakes, and you got to go through the what is it, the little thing, where you pretend like you're in a plane, video in front
simulator.
of you. Oh, the simulator. Yeah. Right, you go through the simulator and you crash the thing 30 times. You're like, good God, I'd have killed 500 people. Thank God that wasn't me. And then pretty soon you learn how to fly a plane. And then simulator's not even the same thing as going and doing the real plane. Now you're driving, and now you're flying in a real plane. Again, dude next to you, you start all over. Lessons, knocks in the head. Pretty soon now you're a successful pilot, and you can go out on your own. And then you start teaching other people after 15, 20 years of landing at some of the most turbulent landings that you can imagine. You can say, oh, I can do this. Now I can start giving advice on how this works. That's what being an entrepreneur is. So if the problem with too many entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, they never jump because they're scared of the unknown, thinking that if I can dot every I and cross every T, I'm going to then go be a successful entrepreneur. The problem is that does not exist, and you will find yourself in the grave before you've dotted the I.
Yeah, because I've read into a lot of like biographies for like successful entrepreneurs, and especially like Jeff Bezos or the Steve Jobs, and a lot of people said if they worked for them, specifically Mr. Wonderful on the Shark Tank, he worked for Steve Jobs, and he said he was one of the hardest people to ever work with, just because of his mentality. But he was so on the edge of risk constantly and always putting everything on the line, which was what propelled his company and his brand to that next level. Whereas a lot of people would take it as, hey, I'm going to grow here and then a little notch here, and then I'm going to play it safe here, make sure I have the money, make sure I have the availability for like employees and stuff, and then I'll go to that next level. And he was just one of those people that were always on the edge, being of the more having the balls to actually just make some crazy moves, and people literally call him crazy, but that crazy is actually sane for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, this is where the Steve, what's the name of the guys down here? It has the big building over off 65.
Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey. This is where I diverge. I've said this on 500 different podcasts that I diverge from the Dave Ramsey's, because the Dave Ramsey world, if you want to be rich while you're still breathing, doesn't really exist. If you want to pay your bills, you want to build up some deposit, some money in the bank, if you want to retire, right, and have enough money that you don't have to work anymore, the Dave Ramsey program is fantastic. And the Dave Ramsey program is probably fantastic for 97% of the population. That's probably why he's done so well.
Very well.
But for those of us that want to, and that homeboy has done well. Steve and I live down here where he does. That money's house up on the hill. It's like 12,000 feet. That thing's a bomb.
15 mil.
Yeah, 15 mil.
I wonder if he paid cash for it and didn't go in debt.
I don't know. To be determined. But his program is not conducive to business. It's not it's not conducive to finding riches and making something of yourself at any time in life, but in particular when you're young. Because if you play it safe, which is his program, I promise you, playing it safe will not make you any money. Playing it safe will not get you what you want. It won't. If what you want is riches. But just like you want to be in shape, just like you want to have muscle, just like you want to feel good about yourself and take your shirt off in the summertime, business takes work. It takes sacrifice. It just does. There's no two ways around it. There's no easy way. So you cannot write a plan out in business that will make it easy. The problem is that the business we see is online, and or it's Fortune 500s, or it's these startups that are funded by these mega billionaires and all of that. And that is a very small fraction of business, and rarely will anybody get anywhere near touching any of that. The rest of it is all of us out there with a lawnmower starting a business.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
Let me ask you this, Jerry. You had a time in your life where you weren't with a mentorship group. What do you think the biggest aversion is that people that have and start their own business and trying to make a go at it? What do you think the biggest aversion they have to getting that support, that mentorship, that help?
Most entrepreneurs, a large majority of them are men, and we know that, right? And so the three of us, I'm pretty sure. I know you're a man, Steve. So we'll just go with that. We're just going to say that.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
Matt's new
Until I
nickname,
pop a kid out, then that's going to be the decision factor.
Matt's new nickname is TBD.
All right. So we got Steve and we got TBD. And so, but generally, TBD will understand what Steve and I are talking about. That is mostly men. But we know men, we don't like to be told what to do. We don't want to ask questions. And I've said this many times, that the epiphany that I had at 28 years old, running this big business the way that I was and successful and making more money than I could ever imagine, which was $50,000 a year. And that epiphany told me to shut up and listen. And I listened to that epiphany, and I changed my life because of it. And from then on, I could care less what I thought. I could care less what anyone thought about what I thought or thought about me. And I was all on learning mode. So that I could fill my brain with everything I didn't know, because I was in my way towards maximizing or understanding, or at least being able to try to touch what I was capable of doing. I was stopping myself from figuring that out. And there's no guarantee just because you shut up and listen and start paying attention and getting advice and getting out of your own way that you're going to be successful. But it is a big step towards getting out of the way, because that is probably the thing that stops us most. We don't want to ask, and many times we don't want an answer that goes against what we've done. Mm-hmm. We don't want an answer that goes against what we think. As pool players, Steve and I play pool, and you'd be amazed. I'm a pretty good pool player. At the number of times that a pool player that is 1/10 the pool player I am will tell me what they're going to do because this is how they see it. It would be like, I'm trying to think of an example. It'd be like me jumping in the water next to Michael Phelps and telling him, stand aside, son, let me show you what time it is. Now, I can barely jump in the water, okay? This is the equivalent that we're talking about.
Yeah.
A dude jumping in the water and Michael Phelps. But I'm going to go, and Mike says, hey, if you do this one little thing, just let's start there, just one little thing, you'll go faster. You're like, Mike, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't care
Child's
about
play
all the
over
gold
here.
medals. Right, yeah. You don't know what you're talking about. So it is that example that I've ran into a million times, and that's where I just go, be it a business owner or a pool player, because they're not listening. So I've seen businesses crash it on the deck because they don't want to take the advice they need to not crash it on the deck. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, there seems to be a big aversion, I notice it in what I do, to getting the help, and even if they agree to get the help. So I'm always curious, what is it that keeps you from crossing over to getting the help, even when it's staring you in the face? It all makes logical sense, but you still don't get the help, even if you agree with everything they said. So, I was looking, also, great answer, by the way, but also, what is it in our psychology that keeps us, a big part of it's men. We don't read directions, won't ask for directions. We'll figure it out and screw it up a few times and only really get help if it looks like it's the last resort, when we could have got help on the first go around and saved ourselves a lot of heartache and trouble, especially if it's from somebody like, look, I've screwed that up 9 ways to Adam. Let me show you how to not to do that. So at least, if nothing else, it keeps you from making the mistakes. There's
Right.
much value added in that, whether or not by default you're going to be more successful by not hitting the potholes that somebody else has replaced multiple tires hitting those potholes and just listening to them.
If you're willing to listen to the advice that helps you avoid the potholes, unfortunately, and this is unfortunately, most of us have to go through the potholes because the guy giving us the advice, he's too old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know how social media works. He's not cool enough. He doesn't wear the right clothes. He doesn't talk the right. He didn't see the dude with the Lamborghini and doing the thing, and right. And I heard the speech, and he wasn't watching the guy that said do all of it. He doesn't know those things. And we just go, okay, good luck. And then you rattle the teeth out hitting the pothole, and all of a sudden you're like, what was that thing that dude was saying? There was something to it. Meanwhile, you lost $10,000 or $100,000, or in my case, $1 million. Multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times. Listen up, people. Millions of dollars. Multiple times, right? So it's just so much easier to listen and get the advice. And the thing is, people love giving advice who have been there and who have done that. But our society is, our culture is kind of throwing out the elder. But I'm telling you, the elder knows everything. So those are the guys that should be listened to. For me, the guy in my group, in my peer-to-peer group, that sold me on it was all about, dude, you can't afford not to. And that intrigued the hell out of me when he said you can't afford, because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford the time, and I couldn't afford the money. I joined a peer-to-peer group at 30 years old. My company was doing $8 million a year, went on to do $14 million a year in the next 2 years. I was busy as hell. I wasn't making any money. I was refereeing basketball games at night. I've told the story many, many times. But dude walked in, and he's like, you can't afford not to. And I was like, that's such an interesting answer. I can't. What kind of magic is this guy selling that he says I can't afford not to, given what I was doing? Man, he couldn't have been more right if he tried. And again, I've lost millions of bucks, and they helped me minimize that. And I made millions of bucks, and they helped me make that, being in that peer-to-peer group. So I think it's just men, Steve-O, for the most part. I had a story one time. I was helping. I've told this story before. I was helping a lady she was starting a business in Northwest Portland, up in Matt's part of the world. I told the story a couple of podcasts ago, so I won't. But real quick, and I was like, no, you can't just serve one group. And she was like, oh, in this case, she hated the conservatives. I'm not doing anything with that. Okay, good luck. And I mean, she all but cussed me out. Right? I was helping her, and she cussed me out. That business didn't make it a year. Of course it didn't make it a year, right? Because she just half the people, and she's putting signage and logos and all kinds of stuff up there that just drives off half of the business, which makes no sense, and the business failed. But again, she stood by her values, and which was that she wasn't going to serve a conservative. And so those kind of things get in the way also. But more specifically, I think people just do not reach out and look for help enough.
Yeah, I think part of that is – go ahead.
I think a lot of it, too, is because you started your own business. It's your own baby. You get tunnel vision. I've heard that before. And I think you think your situation is so unique. Like, well, you don't understand trucks like I do because you drive a Ford and I drive a Chevy.
Yeah.
So,
right.
and it's like, and by the way, for the record, I drive a Ford too. But
Yes.
I think everybody thinks that we have to make sure that's clear. I think people think their situation's so unique that they get the tunnel vision, not realizing how so much of business in general, small business, running a business, does overlap, whether it's a widget or if it's a service, a physical product or a service.
Don't matter.
Business at its core is business at its core. And I think people get stuck thinking, yeah, but my this is what I do. This is unique, and it's so different from everybody else. So they don't see they could get some help, or they think their situation is.
And inevitably, the problem with the business is typically the person running the business, because we get it in our head that the problem with the business is the business, and we don't have it in our head that the problem with the business is me. The problem can't be me because I sacrifice everything. The problem can't be me because I put in and risked everything. The problem can't be me because I'm working all of the hours and putting in all of the time. Right? The problem can't be me because. And so when you have that, you're in a hole in the ground, and you can't see out of the hole. And you need somebody to come in and tell you that you're looking at the world in a hole, so you can't see anything. I'm up here on top of the hole. I've been in the hole. I remember how I got out of the hole, and now I see everything that you're missing. Let me help you. But, man, I'm good. I'll get myself out. Don't worry about it. I got my way, because you don't understand, because I've sacrificed and I've risked and I've lost time with my kids and I've done all of these things and I work all of these hours and blah, 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 blah. And pretty soon you don't have a business because you didn't listen. So it's been my experience that it's not, majority of the time, it's not the business. It's the person running the business who can't get out of their own way. I've always said, for almost any business you bring me in there, I'll save you 5%. I'll find 5%. It's not that I'm I bet if somebody came to my businesses, they'd find 5%, because it's so easy, and probably more, right? And I would say that I'll probably find more than 5%. And because I'll look at it differently than you are. I didn't build it. I didn't put it together. But the basics of business are still the same. So I'm going to look at the business through eyes that aren't influenced by all of the history, and that would probably mean the business is going to do better than you would have otherwise, because remaining that sharp, especially when you're making money, is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you get a little blinded by it.
Not a little.
You start being successful.
Yeah,
I remember Wolfgang Puck, one of the first times I ever heard a quote about business that really struck me, and that's why I remember it. Wolfgang Puck, the famous chef, said that he learned more from one business that failed than that 10 that succeeded.
Yes,
and the mistakes.
that's true.
You learn so much more, because when it's going good, you quit looking for things. When like to your point, when you're making money, you quit looking for objections or obstacles or potential pitfalls, because you think you're in the good. You're feeling good about yourself.
Right. Yes, that's right. When you make most money I ever lost is when I was making the most money.
That's a quote right there.
Best month I ever had. The next month started the worst run I ever had. So when I was the most money I ever made is when I lost the most money. And I think that's, to your point, Steve, is really easy to do, because, I'm talking hundreds of thousands a month I was making. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't smell so bad, man. I'm doing pretty good for myself, right? Okay, right? I came out of nothing, and I got here, and I did all of this, and then one bad decision. You make 100 good ones, you make one bad one, and man, it's going to cost you.
It's funny how that works in business, because it's always like when you see the success, they have this term like successful overnight, or they became an overnight success, and it's just literally the amount of hours that no one saw that they put in to be visualized as an overnight success was all of the unknown hours of putting in the work to actually be successful. And then to your point, it just takes one bad decision to lose all of that. It's the same with like gambling. You can be making money. You're like, oh, wow. And then you bet it all. And you're like, the next card that hits over on that table, it's all gone.
Yeah. And I think, but for a good operator who has experience, let's say they've got, I'm an overnight success. It just took me 30 years. Yeah. A good operator has all of that experience. And if you are built to be an entrepreneur, the lessons that you learn losing are more valuable than the lessons that you learned winning. If all you ever do is win, What do you do when the loss finally comes, and it's going to come? And how do you come back from that? And I'm telling you, for any business owner, running a business is hard. Being an entrepreneur is brutally difficult. And so to think that it's not, to think that it's easy, you're just fooling yourself. And if you saw somebody on the internet that says it's easy, you're setting yourself up for disaster. You need to be ready to go in and fight. But like I've told Matt about having kids, when my son was born, I looked at the world completely differently. And it changed my whole perspective on how everything was in the world. So all of a sudden, the things that didn't seem possible became possible in a smaller way, but no less significant, was being an entrepreneur and being a business. I had no idea I was capable of all of the things it took. 18-hour days and all of the nightmares and all of the pressure and all of the hours and all of the phone ringing and all of the responsibility and all of the risk and all of the sacrifice and all of those things that go into all of the discipline I had to learn, that go into all the lessons I had to learn, the shutting up and listening, just the beatings that you take on a regular basis. $200,000 payrolls due on Monday and it's Friday night. All of it. I had no idea. Just right here, I ran out of air trying to describe all of that. It seems onerous and impossible, but that's called Monday in my life. So you realize pretty soon that the Monday of sitting playing video games all day and my Monday are way two different Mondays. And the guy on the couch can't even imagine that. But then you get to be where I am, and you can imagine everything. And now all of a sudden, when you fail, it's like, okay, what's next? What am I going to do next? Because I haven't really failed, because I'm not back on the couch, because I have all of this experience. Now what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's a part of the personal branding that I think when you mentioned older generation and elders that are not visually seen as often as these entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, founders that are my age or even younger. And it's just because they know how to use social media and they know what sells to the average audience viewer on social media platforms. But I think there's a lot of, you said, truth and just understanding and wisdom from elders and people that have been in business for years and years and years. And even if it's, like you said, not applicable to like a social media post, or if they don't know how to set up an email marketing campaign, those are all things that you just learn through just skills, but they have another caliber level of skills that me as an owner or a founder would never understand unless I actually heard it from them, because I haven't been in any of those kind of scenarios.
I'll give you a perfect example. Your brothers came to me, they want to start a business, right? Steve-O was there, came in, we were having a conversation. They just want to ask questions. Smart, super smart to ask questions. The assumptions they brought with them were what I would expect to hear from most people, right? There's nothing wrong with the assumptions that they made, except that every assumption was wrong. But that's okay, right? Because one of them, I don't know, Jake or Aaron, one of them said, in fact, I got to quit watching the internet. I got to quit watching videos, because what you get in those environments is not on the ground, going to start it up, where do I sign, what's the first steps, what's it going to take? Because every time they would ask me a question, and this has happened a million times, and good on them for being smart enough. A lot of people jump without finding somebody to talk to. I would say, yeah, but what about this? What's that? What's that? I said, yeah, if you do that, then we have to deal with this, and this. And what about that? Well, we didn't think about that. And then they'd say, well, we're going to do that. And I'd say, that's great. Okay. What about this? And then this and this and this and this. And if you're going to go into this business, did you ever think about this and this and this and all of those pieces? And no, we just wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and we wanted to just jump and go do it. And I was like, well, you can, but I would worry about this, and this. Well, then it's, what would you do? Well, I'd do this. And here's why I would do this, because you eliminate all of these other things. It's just business 101 that you learn in the trenches. And that's more information. If somebody sat with me for an hour and we had a conversation, I will give you more information on starting a business, running a business, what problems you're having with your business, employees, whatever it might be, compared to a Ivy League PhD first day business graduate. I promise you will learn more from me in an hour than you will learn for I don't know. One of those people will never teach you anything. Nothing that'll help you on the ground with your life. And that's the reality. But back to Steve's point, it's just so hard to ask. Your brothers, his sons were smart enough to come and ask questions. And a lot of people are smart enough to ask questions before they get started. But it's a difficult thing to go through that. Back to our point, Steve, that you asked earlier. It's hard to sit down. Your sons have been taught, sit down, listen, let's have a conversation. But so many people to sit there and I always say, I said it to a guy earlier this week, I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I don't mean to blow up your dreams, right? Because every time he said, I'm going to do this, and I was like, well, the problem with that is...
Yeah, to your point, too many people are just soft. And that's the problem with generations today because of... I wouldn't say of any initial social media or how people raise their kids or anything like that, but across the board, people are just soft compared to how it used to be. And when we take negativity as a literal negative, it's a positive. And I try to invite, like even in corporate America, of all environments that are usually the most constrictive to actually someone growing and being able to become a business owner. They're like, hey, I'm on my track. It's the easy way. I don't have to think about it. Little to no distractions, little to no situations that could blow up my dream of climbing the corporate ladder. Even in there, I literally approach my coworkers with, hammer me on this. And they almost look at me like shocked, like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not saying that you need to be angry or aggressive or mad at me, but hammer me with what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I will just sit there and take it and take it and take it because I know that's a strength and a resilience of growth that most people would never comprehend. They'll just take it as like, oh, woe is me. Oh, I'm not good at my job, and then run off, and then they just hide in the corner. And
right. How dare they talk to me like that?
Yeah, it's a totally different, like even for people that are older than me and my age within corporate America, they all give the same kind of reaction of like, oh, no, I didn't mean it. I'm like, I'm not asking you to yell at me and be mad. If you want to yell at me and be mad, fine, you can do that. But hammer me with what I don't know because I want to get better. And it's just a totally different mindset perspective.
I remember the first time I had a situation like that. It was in a granite shop I worked in, and a buddy of mine and I were in the CAD design department, and we cut granite slabs into countertops for people's homes. And both of us had done everything from install to the machine work to the design. And the owner came in one evening. We were working late because we had lost a design sector, and we had to pick it up ourselves. And so we were working double shifts in the design area. But I remember he came in, and he had an idea for something that had to do with how the shop ran or scheduling or something like that. And I'll never forget, it's the first time I had somebody else do this. He said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing, Steve and Adam. He said, I'm thinking about doing this because I think this will help this, this, and this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then his next words, he said, okay, now shoot holes in it.
Yeah.
He told me to shoot holes. And so we sat there for a little bit, and we probably talked for about half an hour. And he was testing it to see if it would really work, and if we came up with enough objections, but, based on our experience in the shop and in the installation, delivery of the process, even though he had built it, but he knew he was detached from it some. So it was the idea of that was his way of getting help, another perspective. Is there something I'm missing? Help me find the blind spots, I guess is a good way to put it, in my idea, because you get an idea, you get stuck on an idea. I think this will work, I'll do it. No different, Jerry, than you and I are playing pool, and I've got a shot that I think it'll work in everything. And then all you do is pick the ball up and put it right on the other side of the ball I'm going to shoot. And then the whole thing materializes. Oh, if I do that, then this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. Whereas if I took that shot, I might make that first shot, but then I'm screwed.
Right.
I have no further shot. So I always remember him coming in saying that, coming up with an idea. No, he was the owner of the company. He had enough foresight and wisdom to know that I don't see everything because I'm not in here doing what they do every day. And so I think that's invaluable for a business owner to be able to open up enough. It takes courage, back to the point of being men and not wanting to get help. But, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm thinking and where I'm going. Shoot holes in it. Find the blind spots.
That's where I say, change today what you changed yesterday. Be willing to change today what you changed yesterday. And also, a good manager gets his people to do for him what he wants and lets them think it's their idea. There's pieces of both of that in there. But you have to be willing to change today what you changed yesterday. But so often we go, but I did all that work yesterday. I don't want to change it today because it's got to be right, not because it's correct, but because I did the work. Yep. And we look at that as kind of the starting point rather than that's the ending point, meaning you did it yesterday, that was yesterday, what are we going to do today, and how do we change that up? And it's back to our point about men wanting to hang on to the things that they're doing, right, for far too long, just simply because they don't want to be wrong. And so to your boss's point, the owner of that company, being wrong is fantastic because wrong can be very expensive. So if you're willing to be wrong, then you can really make some money. That's how you can really maximize what you're doing. If you assume what you're doing is right, someone might walk in later and tell you how you could have done it better and made more money. And then you look at that and go, well, if you had told me that 6 months ago, I could have done it 6 months ago, except that it was right in front of you 6 months ago, but you were so high on your own supply you didn't look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. Yep.
It's one of those weeks. It's good. It's good.
Dude, we filled the hour in no time flat. That's what you get for asking me a question before we started.
Yeah, that's why I was like, we just need to hit record.
And I'm going to end it with, I'll end it with this. Does my mic sound funny, guys? It got funny in my ears.
No, it sounds good.
I'm going to end it with this. My part of this, I'll end it like this. I encourage anybody to go become an entrepreneur. It's hard for a reason. Anything worth doing is hard. So if you think you have that innately in you to go become an entrepreneur, I am 1,000% for you and 1,000% for you doing it, and I would not do anything else. I would be the worst employee in the world, 1,000%, because I'd just be going there and what do you do all day? Right? What do you do all day? Okay, I can do both of your jobs. Go. Right? Doesn't make any, I don't understand what you're doing. This makes no sense. Corporate, extra money. Why is there so many people? Everybody takes lunches. Everybody goes on breaks. Everybody gets there right on time, and everybody leaves right on time. That's not my program. I can't do it. So it's not for me. So this risky world that I live in is the world for me, where it's massive failures and it's massive successes. That's the world for me. And it can be in the middle, too. It doesn't have to be, because I take some gigantic bites. And sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it punches you right in the face. But the point being, if you want to, if you think you've got that in you, it is worth trying, because even if you fail, you will come out way far ahead of everyone else around you in failure. And they'll make fun of you about failing, and look at he tried, and he should have known better. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but I look at the world way differently than I did before I ever started. And I know things that you guys will never, ever understand simply because I went out and gave it a shot. So you're going to do better in the corporate world. You're going to get promoted faster. You're going to be a better employee. You're going to look at the world different. Your investments, you're going to ask more questions. 1,000 things are going to come out of failing, trying to do this thing that is so difficult. But there is nothing better than building a business from scratch. There is nothing more satisfying, short of having children, Matt, nothing more satisfying than short of having children than building a business from scratch. So contrary to everything that I just said, which is just to warn everybody about how hard it is and to give you insight and examples of how difficult it is, go become an entrepreneur if you think you have that in you and you want to give it a shot. On this podcast I did one day this week, I can't remember which one, the guy on the other side does nothing but interview CEOs. And so when I explained to him what I was doing and why I was doing the Kronos Group, it made sense to him, and his eyes lit up, and he's like, everyone has to have this. And we talked about mastermind groups, and he's like, yeah, all the CEOs talk about mastermind groups. And mastermind groups are great. They absolutely are great. But a peer-to-peer group is going to help you on the ground with the problems as I've described them. Imagine you are thinking about adding a truck to your company, and you have questions. And you get somebody like me sitting across from you. And I'm going to give you more information on what to look out for on that truck. You won't see right then that I might have saved you $20,000 in expenses over the next year on mistakes you would make putting that together. things to look out for: drivers backing into things, hitting things, software that you can use to track them, the federal, the state, the local guidelines, all of those, what kind of gas where to buy it, how to look for, all of the things that you do to maximize all of your profit and to avoid making the mistakes, which is really the expensive part, you get from somebody on the ground. Now imagine you're sitting with a group of 8 or 10 people. You get your half an hour and you're explaining what your business is or the issues that you're facing, and somebody says, I dealt with that last year, and here's exactly how I dealt with it. Here's the card. Call Mike. Mike's an expert at this. So 5 seconds before, you're sitting in this group. You got this big problem. You think you're the only one that has it, and not only are you then talking about it, but the dude right next to you is like, oh, yeah, I dealt with that last year. No problem. Talk to this guy. What's the value in that? How much quicker do you find success? In my case, as I was growing so quick, they helped me figure out that I didn't know how to make money. I knew how to sell, but I didn't know how to make money. So I made millions of dollars because these guys were there to guide me through how to make money, how to deal with the operations. And my business was way bigger than theirs were at $14 million a year. I think we capped at $20 or $22 million a year. But still, the information that they gave me, the perspective that they gave me, the accountability that they gave me was absolutely critical. You just don't get that from mastermind groups. Generally speaking, they're going to make you feel better. They're going to give you some information. They're going to give you tidbits. They're going to bring in good speakers. They're valuable. There's reason to have them. But I never made any money off of those groups. I made money off of my peer-to-peer group, just like the Kronos group that we're putting together. So in my podcast with this guy that I was having on his podcast, who does nothing but interview CEOs, we spent a bunch of time talking about it because to him, he thought that is the critical piece. And it is the critical piece if you think about in life, the critical pieces in life are mentorship. Why figure out how to do anything when someone can tell you what to do, who has been there, not read a book, not got educated on it, right? Not took a seminar, actual people who have done the work. And if you get those people, whatever it is that you're doing, you're just going to do better in life. You're just going to speed up the process of finding success or getting married or being promoted or being a dad or whatever the situation is. Find the people who have done it and ask them questions. That is magic. But like we talked about in this podcast, it's not always the easiest thing to do. So if you are an operator out there, so we're going to end every podcast this way going forward. If you are an operator, find somebody that'll help you. Find a mentor. Come join the Kronos group. You'll get my help. You'll get Matt's help. You get Steve's help. You'll get the help of the other people in the group, or go find another one just like this, or find a mentor that'll help you one-on-one, or reach out to me. I'm happy to help you one-on-one. But I'm telling you, whatever the cost is, it's like the advice the Fortune 500 CEO gave to me in my group the first time he met with me. You can't afford not to, either time or money.